I've been wanting to bring you guys this like freshman tips video since I was in freshman year. All of these tips are, yes, specific to UChicago. Some of them could be extrapolated to other schools. We're just gonna go right into the spicy tea that I wish I had known. First things first, you're gonna go to school and there are gonna be all of these different RSOs or registered student organizations and clubs. Some clubs, if you're watching in my audience, you're probably gonna want to get in those more like competitive clubs just because I'm an econ major and most business, finance, consulting, econ clubs at UChicago are pretty competitive. If you don't get in, it's not related to your self-esteem, it's not related to your self-worth. These clubs usually have like 3 rounds of interviews or a 3-round process. First you have like a case application where they give you a case, you do the case, or maybe sometimes 1 or 2 cases, you answer a couple of short answer questions and do some basic calculations. Then you send in your resume and all that, they review it, they let you know if you've been accepted for an interview, you do the interview, you get into the final round, and then I think you do like a group interview or another interview. It really depends on the club. And then you're notified if you get in or not. I think on average they take around 10 to 20 students per year, which is like a less than 10% acceptance rate from their clubs. So what are they really looking for? I think all clubs are looking for the same thing, which is they're looking for like smart, ambitious people that could click with the club. I didn't know about this at first, but different clubs definitely have different vibes. It's not all, you know, homogenous, and it's not just like this club is like more snaky than the other. It's really not like that, but it is more like if you interview or you talk to some of the people who are in the club and ask them what they think the club community is like, I feel like different clubs have very different answers. Some of them are going to be more chill, and some of them are going to be a bit more intense, and they take pride in the fact that it's more intense, and that's fine. If you don't get in, it doesn't mean that you're not smart, it doesn't mean that you're not ambitious, it just means that in whatever materials that they saw of you, you just didn't demonstrate the level that they wanted or that specific type of person that they want. I will say though, if you do get into these clubs, that's great. Do it. It's a great, you know, like resume booster, and all it really does is indicate to the company or whatever you're applying for that you're interested in this field.
I just wanted to add the fact that even if you get in, it doesn't mean that you're set. I know a lot of people are like, oh, if you get into this and this club, you're set for the rest of your career at UChicago, you're gonna get all these amazing jobs. Not true.
If you don't get into the clubs, it's not the end of the world, because there are many other ways you can still indicate that you're interested in this field. I did like 4 case competitions my time in freshman year, and that adequately made up for like what I thought was like a severe lack on my resume, but it really wasn't. Second point, friends don't last. Specifically O week, which is orientation week, or like beginning first quarter early on, like your lunch buddies, they won't last if you don't put in effort into them. So the tough part about this piece of advice that I wrote down is it's a thin line between trying to keep on to like all the people you meet, but also like pick and choose the people you actually want to spend your time with, because you have so many people that you're exposed to, or even just because of like your like race or ethnicity, you have exposure to like a certain group of people that you can just automatically just join. Having friends in college, I think someone else described it as like dating, and I think that's very true. You need to specifically outline time slots on your calendar to devote to friends, to meeting specific people. Don't get caught up in the whole, oh my god, I miss you so much, let's grab lunch sometime, or yeah, we should totally grab like a coffee sometime. Oh my lord, it's not fake, right? Most of the time. It's not like they're trying to get with you because your connections. That's just how people schedule their time and like separate their time into different like spaces. I think that's completely fine. Just be careful who you're investing that time into. I think at UChicago, large social groups just really isn't possible. Maybe it's possible now because everyone has a bit more time and all that in freshman year. Later on, when everyone goes into their different majors and has different focuses, it really isn't that possible. The average at UChicago is you have a couple of really close friends, 1 or 2, that you communicate with and devote a lot of time to, and the rest you sometimes meet up for coffee, you sometimes meet up for lunch, you sometimes, you know, drop in and say hi, study together at the reg, stuff like that, and that's it. That's fine. Go in with that mindset. Don't go in thinking, I gotta make friends, I gotta make friends, I gotta, you know, have a social circle and like go out on the weekends and like be cool. You shouldn't care, really. I'm not gonna say no one cares, because people do, judging by, you know, how many people you're hanging out with, or if you're a girl, whether you're hanging out with like guys, or if you're Asian, if you're just hanging out with like the Asian kids, people are gonna judge you based on that. If you worry about that part of your social image, go ahead and try to expose yourself to different types of people. If you're not, then don't be. That's it. It may sound a little nonchalant, but I'm trying to give you very real advice about how I feel, which is appearances do matter. The degree to which that matters to you is decided by yourself. Next one is something that is not by any means UChicago specific. Don't spend money that you're not comfortable with. I feel like money isn't really something that we talk about as in like on the channel or on social media or just between friends in real life, because it's such a sensitive issue. I really don't think it's that complicated. Look, regardless if you're rich or not, that has nothing to do with the amount of like disposable income you as a college student have. Sure, your parents may give you more pocket money or allowance or whatever that you can spend, but whether you decide how much of that to actually spend and how much that to save is really up to each person. Don't judge people on whether they are like willing to drop $500 at a club weekends. On the other hand, if you would like to invest time in your friends, spend $25, go rock climbing, spend like $40, grab like a more jazzy meal, all of that is fine. Just be sure to think about who you're investing your time into, and I think that's a great option. Which kind of leads me on to like, it's like in the parentheses point, it's not really advice, but try to get a part-time job. I was lucky enough that I had like an online tutoring job since I was in high school, and I just continued that in college, but it's really worth it. I make enough to cover my rent now and my living expenses, but I also save like 60% of that, so I don't spend a lot usually. Freshman year, I definitely spent more, and I don't think it was money that was wasted. I invested in like lunches, in birthday presents, in entertainment. If you're unable to spend that kind of money, that's fine. I'm not gonna tell you to be transparent about it. This might sound spicy, but again, as I said, appearances matter. It doesn't mean that you should be holding up fake appearances. It just means that you shouldn't go around saying that like, oh, I don't want to go to lunch with you guys because I can't afford it, right? You can find a better way to say that, for example, but also when you say something like that, it makes people extra wary, extra concerning about your circumstances, and that might psychologically cause them to invite you out less, for example, because you know we don't want to hurt her feelings, which in turn will hurt your feelings more probably. So what I will say is that if you can't go, then budget for like a certain amount of money to spend per week. The budget I gave myself, just for reference, was around $30 a week. It's probably enough to spend on like one nice lunch with friends, right? I think $20 a week is a decent budget for anyone. Of course, if you're going out to party or if you have like Greek life, then that will quadruple sometimes or even higher, but it again depends on your lifestyle. The next one goes out to all of my like finance prospective homies. Don't think being career oriented means you're getting ahead or being cooler than everyone else during freshman year. No one cares. And when I say no one, I mean the most important people, which are the companies, the upperclassmen, the club people, all of that you're trying to like appeal to, right? When you're a freshman, you should legitimately utilize that position to try to expose yourself to more like professional settings, because there are no consequences. Oh, you're a freshman, it's good that you're already doing this, I didn't know this when I did that. Maybe when you hear all of this, you're thinking, oh, that just means I need to do it more, and that doesn't give me any comfort at all. Looking back now, if you start out too much in the beginning, you're going to burn out later on. It's really difficult to maintain that same pace of like showing up to every info session 10 minutes early in a suit, showing up to every club meeting 10 minutes early in a suit, showing up to business class or booth classes 10 minutes early to talk to your professor who really doesn't care that much that you're there. Usually what will happen is those people who seem like they didn't really care put in gradually more amount of effort, and they're the ones usually that have a more stable life, stable social life, stable sleep schedule, stable mental health, and they end up with like your dream job. GPA. GPA is the easiest to get during freshman year. It doesn't matter if you're taking like super difficult classes. No matter what you're taking, the next year is going to be more difficult. Don't slack on your studies for extracurriculars because jobs don't really care about GPA. GPA matters. Don't pick super difficult STEM classes when you're just getting into UChicago as well. It's going to be more difficult than you think. And more importantly, there's no point in you taking this as a freshman. Unless you're trying to graduate in 2 years, which is a very realistic goal, or trying to go abroad for the entire year. Don't take extraordinarily difficult classes just because you can course flex on other people. It's a thing at UChicago. People are like, oh, what classes are you taking this quarter? And you're like, oh, I'm taking Math 200 and like physics mechanics, like honors, as well as like orgochemistry, as well as power and philosophical perspectives, right? People are gonna be like, wow, that's so insane. Oh my God, I can't believe you did that, right? But ultimately the one who's gonna feel the brunt of that hard work is gonna be you. And unless you are genuinely trying to do something academically, don't do it. Even just to prove a point to yourself, don't do it. If your self-worth or your like social standing is going to be based on the fact that you're taking more difficult classes and doing well in them, something before that step is probably wrong. Just saying. The next one is more O-week oriented, but getting into parties early on equals clout. That's it. That's just the situation. It's like, oh, I just went to DU party last night, a frat. Are you going to the Sigma Chi thing tonight? Or are you going to the Darty? And if you say you're going, or yeah, I have an invite, that's immediately gonna get you more clout. Does it matter really later on? Not really. But what it does mean is that you get more exposure to people in Greek life. There's nothing bad about that. And I will say that during orientation week, where all of the freshmen are like, oh my god, I don't know anybody, what would I do? I really want to get into a party, and you start being like nice to people just to do it. I don't think that's fake. I think that's fine. It's like everyone's really anxious to try to, you know, expand their social circle early on, and frat parties are like a good way to relax on the days anyways and see actually what like the American college life is like. Be prepared, go out with a group of girls, because girls always stick up for each other, and that's my favorite part about frat culture, honestly, which is if a guy is bothering you, this random girl you've never seen before is gonna go up and be like, are you okay? And communicate with the eyes, because if you're not, then she will whisk you away, you'll start dancing, any of that, and you don't even know her, you've never even talked to her, you don't know her name, you can barely even see her face in the light. If you're a guy, I don't think you're subject to the same amount of social pressure. Knock yourself out. One more thing I wanted to touch on is looking down on someone because they're taking easier classes, or because you think they're more stupid than you are or other people, and maybe they enjoy things that you think is uncool, like going to parties or like dressing up in a certain way or taking easier, like all of that stuff like goes into one category. Don't do that. I don't think there's a lot of racism in UChicago. Sexism is another thing that's like a little bit more fine line, and there's a lot of like different like microaggressions and microsigns that you could or could not count towards that. But I don't think racism is a like pronounced problem. But if I wanted to pick to one type of elitism that exists at UChicago, it would be like brain power elitism, if that made any sense at all.
As I'm editing this, I realized that this might need a little bit more contextualization. So what I mean is, both sides of the spectrum, when you ask someone, for example, what their classes are or what their major is, and they reply with something that, in your opinion, isn't as difficult as your major or someone else's major, such as if I say I am a business econ major versus like an econ track 2 or like econ data science major, all of that stuff, people automatically assume that like, oh, you're a business econ major because you can't do math. Sometimes you're just a business econ major because you're genuinely more interested in these booth classes. On the other hand, just because someone is taking like an extraordinarily difficult major, like computationally applied maths, CAM, or like pre-med or something like that, doesn't mean that they're smarter than you are either. It just means that they're particularly more inclined in a certain field and are more interested in it than you and are willing to put more time into it. I've had so many instances where I hear people gossip at UChicago about like, oh yeah, no, that person's doing really well in like this club or that club, but they don't really take difficult classes, and they have like a med major, so it doesn't really mean it like they're, and then the implication in there is it doesn't really mean that they're like that smart. And that really gets to me because just don't do that. Don't be afraid of taking easier classes because of stuff like that, and also don't take harder classes because you want to prove it. Don't judge people for taking easier classes, and don't judge people for taking harder classes. Just on both ends, both sides, try to avoid it. Again, it's the same thing with like the money issue. Because you're smart doesn't mean you need to do the most difficult major. Just because you think you're less intelligent than other people doesn't mean that you should restrict yourself to taking like easier and simple classes. That's it.
Even if you are a full star student in high school, you don't need to take harder classes to prove that to yourself. All right, I have 2 more and then done. So the next one is going to just be about Greek life. Greek life is a lot larger on UChicago's campus than I originally thought. There's zero mention of it in UChicago's like brochures or pamphlets and things like that, so it's obviously not something the university is trying to promote. But there are frats and sororities and sometimes like co-ed fraternities that are on campus, and they have a presence. I don't think racial exclusivity is that big of a problem at UChicago, especially with the sororities. If I look at the rosters, I will see like a pretty good representation of like POC. Majority of them are Asian, I will say, but I think that also has to do with just like the amount of people who rush. I don't think it's nearly as bad as other places. I'm not going to say it's non-existent because I'm not in a sorority, but just looking at the people who rush, I think it's much more diverse than your average American sorority or even your average elite school American sorority, right? For frats, I really can't say. They are definitely majority white. but I don't know what the culture is like. I don't know how inclusive they are of like different sexual orientations. I can't tell, so I can't tell you that. But I will say that a lot of my friends who are more introverted ended up rushing for sororities and frats and genuinely enjoying it, because it really is just another social group of people. If you can afford the dues per quarter, I forget exactly how much they are, but they might be, I think it's like a couple hundred. If you can afford that and you want to try it, even just to rush and see what the rush experience is like, do it. For prospective freshmen out there who are thinking about whether you should rush or not, just do it. The most will happen is you realize you can't walk in high heels and you don't have a red dress, and that's the end of that. You still meet people who are like you in the process. I think it's pretty fun. The last one is going to be something I touched on before, which is pace yourself. No matter is it about academics, friends, social stuff, or like career-oriented things, if you start out too strong and think you can maintain that momentum, that's not gonna work out. I'm telling you, it really doesn't. So in the beginning, pick maybe, if you have 4 hardcore classes, at most 3 things you wanna do. Like applying to internships counts as one thing, and maybe like 2 other relatively high commitment clubs that you want to devote your time to, and do that for at least a month and a half to 2 months. You have to at least hit 3rd week or 4th week before you can make any judgment about whether you can manage your time. I will say UChicago was a lot easier than I thought going in for time management, because I felt like I had a lot of free time because the classes weren't that difficult, but it really catches up with you towards the end. And don't jam pack your schedule, pace yourself. People who win out in the end are people who gradually build up the workload over time, because 1, you learn management skills along the way, and 2, you don't leave behind your coursework. You don't put yourself into a false binary where you have to pick one or the other. Okay. Oh my lord, that was a long talking video. If you're UChicago and your UChicago perspective worried about fall quarter being online, my hot take is I think it will be online. I think even if Illinois, gets out of lockdown, classes are going to be drastically difficult, because you can't put 600 people in a lecture hall and call it quarantine, even if they're 6 feet apart, right? And maybe our university will opt to do that. Maybe face masks will be mandatory, no outdoor activities beyond a certain point, I don't know, install a curfew, no going out on the weekends to downtown. I don't think it's really possible, and so I personally think it might just become online. I said this in a reply to someone. I think UChicago probably won't take the lead to make fall quarter online, but if other elite universities or quarter system universities are doing it, they will probably do it too. Hopefully that wasn't too boring for you guys. I think I covered some decent points, but looking back on my notes, there are definitely some nuances that I didn't really go into. Maybe I hinted at them. So if there's anything that you have questions about or you want me to answer, leave a comment in the description below and I will answer your comments. Come take a look at my cute cat. Hello? You've just been looking up at me this whole time I've been filming. Huh? Huh? Oh, he's so adorable. Why are you so cute? Okay, that's it. Bye.